The morning sun struggles to pierce through the thick jungle canopy. Shafts of pale light filter down, illuminating the damp mist. Outside the small, rickety bamboo hut, Diep is sitting by the stream. The water is freezing. She dips a ragged gray shirt into the current, scrubbing it against a flat stone. Her hands, once soft and manicured, are now red, swollen, and cracked from weeks of hard labor. She pauses, shivering as a wind blows through her thin, faded pajamas. She catches her reflection in a pool of still water. She touches her messy, unwashed hair and the dark circles under her eyes. "I look like a ghost," she whispers to the silence. "Not a wife, not a mother." She splashes water on the reflection, erasing the image. She hates seeing herself like this. She feels she is failing James. A CEO's wife should look like a queen, not a beggar. Inside the hut, James watches her through the gaps in the bamboo wall. His heart clenches. It is a physical pain, sharper than his healing wound. He remembers how she used to look in silk dresses, cameras flashing around her. He was the king, and she was his queen. Now she is shivering in the cold wind while he hides in the dark. He looks down at his hands, large, scarred, stained with dirt. Hands that used to sign billion-dollar contracts now only chop wood. "I cannot buy you Vera Wang," James whispers, his jaw tightening, "but I will not let you feel like a beggar. Not today." He turns to the darkest corner of the hut. He moves a heavy pile of firewood aside. Behind it, wrapped in plastic bags, is his secret treasure. He pulls it out, a massive bundle of white parachute fabric. He scavenged it from the crash site weeks ago. He didn't know why he saved it then. Now he knows. James spreads the fabric onto the rough bamboo table. It spills over the edges like milk. It is durable, lightweight, and has a pearlescent sheen like satin. He closes his eyes and takes a deep breath. He exhales the fugitive. When he opens his eyes, James Nguyen, the architect, the visionary, is back. He grabs a piece of charcoal from the fire pit. He blows the ash off. He doesn't have a measuring tape, so he uses his handspan. He knows the exact length of his thumb, the exact width of his palm. He measured Diep while she was sleeping, memorizing the curve of her waist. Swish, swish. The charcoal glides over the white fabric. James draws with the confidence of a master. He sketches a sweetheart neckline to highlight her collarbones. He designs an empire waistline, high and loose, to flow over her baby bump without restricting it. He picks up the scissors. Snip, snip. The sound is rhythmic. James works with the intense focus of a surgeon. He cuts the fabric into panels. He doesn't look clumsy. He looks powerful. Sweat beads on his forehead, catching the light, making his sharp jawline look even more intense. He picks up a tiny needle. It looks ridiculously small in his giant fingers. He threads it on the first try. He starts sewing. The fabric is slippery. The needle pricks his thumb. He sucks the drop of blood before it stains the white cloth. He adjusts his grip. He finds a rhythm. In, out, loop, pull. His back aches. His eyes burn. But he doesn't stop. He sews his love and his apology into every single millimeter of the dress. Noon approaches. The jungle heat rises. Diep returns to the hut, carrying the heavy basket of wet clothes. She is exhausted. She stops at the door, sensing something unusual. The hut is usually silent, but today there is a strange energy coming from inside. She peeks through the crack. She gasps softly. She sees James. He is sitting on the floor, surrounded by clouds of white fabric. He has taken off his shirt. His torso is slick with sweat, muscles flexing as he pulls the thread tight. He looks wild, yet he is doing the most delicate task in the world. "James?" Diep asks, confused. What? What is all this?" James doesn't look up immediately. He bites the thread and ties a knot with his teeth. He checks the seam. It holds. He looks up. His eyes are bright. "Don't come in yet," James says. His voice is authoritative but warm. He stands up, blocking her view. "We are not open for business yet." "Business?" Diep blinks. "I need to cook lunch, James." "No cooking today." James walks to the door. He turns her around and pushes her back out onto the porch. "Today you are not a cook. You are a VIP client." "VIP?" Diep giggles. "Have you gone mad?" "Maybe," James grins. "Sit here. Close your eyes. No peeking." Diep obeys. She sits down, smiling. She hears rustling inside. She hears James humming the wedding march. 10 minutes pass. "Ready!" James calls out. Diep stands up. Her heart pounds. She pushes the bamboo door open. The hut is transformed. James has hung wild orchids from the ceiling. The back window is open, creating a natural spotlight. And there, hanging on a simple bamboo rack, is the dress. The white parachute fabric shines with an ethereal glow. James has used the excess material to create delicate ruffle details on the shoulders. It looks soft, flowing, and pure. "Is that?" Diep stammers, covering her mouth. "A wedding dress," James says, standing beside it, wiping his hands nervously. "It's not designer, it's not silk, but it's beautiful," Diep whispers, tears welling up. "You made this? For me?" "I'm an architect." James shrugs, trying to act cool, but his voice trembles. "I build things. Try it on, Diep." He holds the dress out to her. It floats in the air between them, a bridge between their harsh reality and their beautiful dream. James stands outside the hut, guarding the door like a sentinel. He paces back and forth in the mud, kicking at a loose stone, unable to stand still. He is terrified. He has negotiated with mafia bosses, faced gun barrels, and jumped out of burning buildings without blinking. But he has never been this nervous. What if it doesn't fit? What if the parachute fabric is too scratchy against her sensitive skin? What if she looks in the mirror, broken and cracked as it is, and sees a clown in a costume instead of a bride? He wipes his sweaty palms on his trousers. The jungle is quiet, save for the distant buzzing of cicadas. He listens to the soft rustling of fabric inside the hut. "Does it fit?" he calls out, his voice cracking slightly. "Wait," Diep's voice comes back, soft and muffled. I'm trying to tie the back ribbon. It's tricky." "Do you need help?" James takes a step toward the door, his hand hovering over the bamboo frame. "No, stay there. Don't look yet." James chuckles nervously, retreating. He looks up at the sky. The clouds are gathering, heavy and gray, promising rain later. But for now, a single shaft of sunlight still shines on his little patch of jungle, as if nature itself is waiting for this moment. The bamboo door creaks, a long, slow sound that echoes in the clearing. James stops pacing. He turns around slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird, and his breath stops. Diep stands in the doorway, framed by the darkness of the hut behind her. The dress fits her perfectly. James's mental calculations were flawless. The sweetheart neckline highlights her delicate collarbones and long neck, drawing attention to her face. The empire waist sits just above her baby bump, allowing the skirt to flow gently over her stomach, making her look not heavy, but divine, like a fertility goddess carved from marble. The white fabric glows against her sun-kissed golden skin. She has let her long black hair down. It cascades over her shoulders in loose, shiny waves. She has tucked a single, small white wildflower behind her ear. She doesn't look like a refugee. She doesn't look like a victim. She looks like an angel who just landed in hell to save him. James stares at her. He forgets to breathe. He forgets the jungle, the poverty, the mosquitoes, the constant threat of death. The world narrows down to this single woman in white. "How do I look?" Diep asks shyly. She smooths the skirt with trembling hands. She looks down, unable to meet his eyes. Is it too much? Do I look silly?" James walks toward her. He moves slowly, reverently, as if he is approaching a sacred altar. He stops just inches away from her, afraid that if he touches her, she might vanish like a mirage. "You look..." James's voice breaks. He clears his throat, fighting back the lump of emotion. "You look expensive, priceless. You look like the queen you are." Diep looks up, her eyes swimming with glittering tears. She giggles a wet, happy sound. "Expensive? This is old parachute fabric, James. It smells like aviation fuel." "No," James shakes his head intensely. He reaches out and takes her rough, red hands in his large, warm ones. "This is a limited edition, one of one, designed and hand-stitched by James Nguyen. No money on earth can buy this dress. No designer can match this price tag." He releases her hands and slowly kneels down in the mud. He doesn't care about his pants. He reaches out to fix the hem of the dress where it touches the dirt. He smooths it out over her bare feet with infinite tenderness. He looks up at her from his knees. His eyes are fierce, burning with a love that borders on worship. "I promised you a wedding," James says, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't have the diamond ring yet. I don't have the guests. I don't have the music. But I have the bride, and that is all that matters." Diep sobs openly now. She pulls him up. She wraps her arms around his neck, burying her face in his broad, sweaty chest. She smells the sweat, the charcoal, and the faint scent of the jungle on him. It is the best smell in the world. "I don't need guests," she cries into his shoulder, her body shaking. "I don't need a ring. I don't need a palace. I just need you. As long as you are here, this hut is my palace." James holds her tight, his hand cradling the back of her head, the other hand resting protectively on her back. They stand there swaying gently in the silence of the jungle. The billionaire in ragged, dirty pants and the village girl in a parachute wedding dress. It is the most glamorous, most heartbreakingly beautiful image the jungle has ever seen. "James!" Diep pulls back slightly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She smiles, radiant. "We should take a picture. We need proof. Maybe we can borrow a phone from the village headman." James smiles, shaking his head gently. "No camera. Too dangerous. Signals can be tracked." "But..." Diep's face falls slightly. "I want to remember this. I want our child to see this." "My eyes," James taps his temple. He looks at her with intensity. "I am taking the picture right now. Shutter speed, infinite. Aperture, wide open. I will keep this file right here, in my brain. Forever. No virus can delete it. No one can steal it, I promise." Diep smiles, touched. She reaches up and strokes his cheek. "Okay, save it. Back up to the cloud." James leans in. He kisses her. It is a slow, deep kiss, tasting of salt tears and sweet promise. For a moment, time stops. Snap. The sound of a dry twig breaking. It is loud. Too loud in the quiet afternoon. James breaks the kiss instantly. The lover disappears. The soldier returns. His body goes rigid. His eyes snap open, the warmth replaced by a cold, lethal focus. He scans the tree line. Caw, caw, caw. A flock of black birds explodes from the canopy 50 meters away, screeching in alarm. They circle erratically before flying away. James's eyes narrow. Birds don't fly like that at noon unless they are disturbed, unless something big is moving towards them. Something that doesn't belong in the jungle. He spins Diep around, shielding her body with his own. He pushes her back towards the dark interior of the hut. "Go inside," he whispers. His voice is no longer the soft voice of a groom. It is a low growl. "Take the dress off, immediately." "James?" Diep grips his arm, fear replacing joy in a split second. "What is it? Is it a tiger?" "No," James says grimly, his eyes locked on a patch of unnatural movement in the ferns. He sees a glint of metal reflecting the sun. A scope? A buckle? Worse. "Who?" Guests, James spits the word out like poison. Uninvited ones. He shoves her gently but firmly through the door. Put on your running clothes. Pack the medicine. Move. Now. Diep scrambles inside, the beautiful white dress trailing in the dirt, catching on a splinter of bamboo. The fairy tale lasted exactly 20 minutes. Now, the nightmare is back. James reaches down and grabs his machete from the porch. He tests the weight. He stands guard at the door, shirtless, muscles coiled, sweaty and dangerous. He looks like a guardian demon guarding the gates of heaven. He will burn the whole jungle down. He will kill every single intruder before he lets anyone touch the woman in the white dress.
Căn tròi giữa rừng, James lặng lẽ biến mảnh vải dù nhặt được thành một chiếc váy cưới dành cho Diệp. Khi cô bước ra trong bộ váy trắng thô sơ, cả hai quên mất thân phận kẻ chạy trốn, chỉ còn lại cô dâu và chú rể giữa thiên nhiên hoang dã. James quỳ xuống trong buồng, gọi Diệp là nữ hoàng của đời mình, khẳng định không cần nhẫn, không cần lễ cưới, chỉ cần có cô là đủ. Trong khoảnh khắc ngắn ngủi ấy trở thành ký ức thiêng liêng mà James hứa sẽ lưu giữ suốt đời. Nhưng hạnh phúc vừa chớm nở đã bị cắt ngang khi James phát hiện có dấu hiệu người tiếp cận. Anh lập tức che chắn cho Diệp, yêu cầu cô thay đồ và chuẩn bị chạy trốn. Câu chuyện khép lại ở hình ảnh James cầm dao đứng gác trước túp lều, sẵn sàng biến mình trở thành con quỷ để bảo vệ cô dâu trong váy trắng.